Welcome to the Thought Echoes podcast, where we have an opportunity to listen in as people reflect on their relationship with their thoughts and their creative work and how it's changed since their brain injury. My name is Beth Bonness, host of the Thought Echoes podcast. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this month's interview.
My working memory is one of the things that got damaged, and so preparing for things is not something I can do anymore, which is frustrating because that kind of used to be my job.
Yeah. Well, then it'll be like a jazz improv.
It definitely, it will be. And I'm better at that. I just to warn you though, I can stall out
No
for
problem.
periods. I didn't have a stroke. I had a traumatic brain injury. I was living in Hawaii on the island of Molokai, which I've been there for 10 or I'm not sure, 10 or 12, maybe 14 years. And my now ex-wife had a nonprofit that was growing structural bamboo up in the mountains. And they had, I had actually gone up there looking for water because I do water witching. And I had found an abandoned well that was dry, but it was about 16 feet deep.
Yeah.
And about 7 feet across. And so they were going to have a big cleanup party up there because there's all these old farms and ranches because all the water disappeared up there after something. And I went up there by myself with my two dogs to cover the well before they had their big cleanup party in a week, and the edge collapsed. I guess. I don't remember this part, but I went in head first. I landed on top of my head and I broke 7 vertebrae.
Oh my.
A bunch of ribs. I don't remember the number now, and I broke my fingers and my big toes, probably climbing out. But
so you climbed out. Somebody didn't find you. You climbed out.
I climbed out of the well and then apparently collapsed. But I woke up and I couldn't stand anymore. So I crawled on my hands and knees for over 3 days and spent 2 nights in the jungle.
Oh my God.
And it was very hot for Hawaii. It was in the high 90s. And I had no water. I had nothing with me. I just had on board shorts and flip-flops. And my 2 dogs. And so I was bleeding out of my ears because my dogs kept cleaning the blood out of my ears. And at one point, it's kind of like a dream. Well, one day I crawled the wrong direction all day because I couldn't tell up from down anymore. And I didn't realize I was crawling uphill, which in Hawaii, it's like if you are going uphill, you are going away from the ocean and you are going away from the road. And the road was about 5 miles away. That might not be right. I'm really bad with numbers. That could have been random. It was a long ways away. And the area I was it was behind a locked gate. And unfortunately, I had just dropped my wife at the airport to go to Portland. And I was self-employed, so nobody really expected me to be anywhere.
I was going to ask you, because you mentioned your wife. So the dog stayed with you rather than they just want to protect their master.
They stayed with me, and there's a lot of like wild boars and stuff up there. I could hear them in the brush at night. And at one point, I just remember like maybe on the third night, just floating way into the sky and looking down and then seeing myself just lying there and seeing the dogs. And then I decided something in me was like, well, I can't leave the dogs there by themselves.
Oh.
And came back. I woke up and they were like licking my face. And I did make it. Obviously, I made it out at the very end.
Wow.
But it was a real struggle of maybe crawling for a minute and then collapsing and crawling for a minute and collapsing, and so thirsty is the one thing I remember is for some reason I was craving orange. All I thought about was orange soda. With, like that just horrible, I don't know.
Fanta or
Fanta. Yeah, I was trying to think of one of the and I remember having one afterwards and going, oh my God, these are awful. But
that kept you going.
It was wow. my
So who found you, or how did you get to somebody who could take you to the hospital?
I crawled all the way to the highway, and it's all kiabi down there, so it's all thorns, and it was pretty cut up. I crawled to the highway, and somebody stopped, and I think they called the police. After that, I was out. I don't remember a life flight. I don't remember being in the hospital. I think they kind of put you in a coma for a while because my back was too broken up. But they also, I think I was in the hospital for 10 days before they kind of woke me up, and then they sent me to a rehab hospital.
Did they treat mostly I'll say the physical, and the TBI part of it, the brain injury part? Was there also rehab for that, or was the focus mostly on the physical?
They can you ask me that question one more time? No, I lost
it. Did they focus on the traumatic brain injury part of your injuries, or is it more about the broken bones?
Oh, no, they completely concentrated on the broken bones. And in fact, they discharged me out of the rehab hospital with nothing.
What year was that? I'm sorry to interrupt. What year was that?
I know
numbers.
It's 2016.
Okay, 2016.
Wow. I think this is common, is when you have unless you have a fracture in your skull, if you have that many other injuries, that's what they concentrate on. And they had me on so much morphine that confusion is kind of expected. But they did not notice that I was partially blind. They didn't notice, or just vision cuts is what they're called. I don't see from here over and from there down. There's like a real quick neuropsych test that they give you that's maybe a couple minutes long. It's kind of, and I was like, I couldn't get the part. There was some really simple math thing, and it was like, I just at that point looked at it like, I don't even know what those symbols are. I don't even know what that is. And they just, Hawaii is not a good place to have any major medical problem. Everybody's very nice, but it's very overly crowded. And if you are from an outer island, which Molokai is about as outer as you get, the outer islands have nothing. And so their big rush was to get me out and then get me home. And it wasn't until I'm not sure about the times. This is the other thing I lost, was I have almost no sense of time. It's gotten better.
You made the appointment.
At least I work on, I work on alarms on my iPhone to do almost anything. But my wife at the time started to notice, and I was part of a lawsuit, and my lawyer, who was an injury lawyer, was kind of like, was talking to me, and then pulled my wife aside, and at that point I could barely speak. I had a very hard time understanding people. So I had hearing aphasia pretty badly. And he was the one that said, I think that your husband has a brain injury. And she didn't take it very well. We're no longer married, and that's
I'm sorry.
That's pretty common amongst people. I was I ended up finally, I went to a speech therapist. I went to Honolulu. I went to like some speech therapy, and I can't remember the names of the other therapies right now, but it's the ones that everybody does. And my speech therapist just pulled me aside and said, "You will not get any help here ever. You need to." She told me the name of a brain injury clinic in Portland, and she said, "This is where you need to go. Don't even bother."
Well, that was helpful advice.
Extremely helpful. I went to Portland, which is where I grew up. And my sister, who's my kind of adopted family, I went and stayed with them.
Oh, wonderful.
And at that point, my wife left, and
I'm sorry.
it's just, this is not for everybody. So it is. That is what it is.
For better, for worse is kind of sounds good, but when you live,
and they are just funny, creative family of eccentric musicians and artists, and it was exactly where I needed to be.
Mm.
I don't know if that was your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Can you tell me about as you were even in the jungle and recovering, the sense of who you are that's inside that where you weren't able to communicate, that there was a gap between, there was some semblance of who you still were, but it's like the ecosystem around you had changed. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I woke up to a very confused world. And I don't know if it was like one thing that happened to me, which I didn't understand at first, was I had no ability to visualize anything anymore. And so, and I was a project manager, construction, worked in architecture kind of stuff for a long time. And I don't know, maybe this is common. It's like when you wake up, you don't really realize what's missing until you go looking for things. And it was like all my memories all felt like they all had been just scattered. There was no timeline left. I didn't really feel that. So I was having a hard time understanding memories or even having them, because when you can't visualize a memory, for me, it doesn't exist. It's hard to find. It's like it's blackness in there, right? It's nothing. I still can't visualize numbers. I still really can't visualize letters, which is why I type, because I can see them. I can't write with my hand. I can write with my hand now, but it feels like somebody else's hand is making letters. But it's very hard to. I came away not really knowing the person that I was before, kind of trying to discover who that was. But you catch on very quickly, and what happened to me was people started telling me about my life, and I just kept taking those in as the truth and as actual memories. I'm very good at confabulation, where if I see a picture of somebody and then you tell me a story that goes with the picture, I can attach it to other memories of that person.
Clever.
Our brains are clever.
Our brains
but
are
it's
clever.
scary because sometimes it's not true. And eking those pieces out was very difficult. And the last 10 years before my accident are probably 10 years I know the least about. And that was very upsetting. That's, I think, what upset my ex-wife the most, was not really remembering her in any meaningful way. And many people, I find that is like, they would be more comfortable if you lost a leg. They could kind of get over it. But losing the
relationship,
your relationship of them is devastating to them, and strange. And at one point, and I wrote about this, I read this thing, I think it's called like the Uncanny Valley or something, when they make and when they made animation at first, like so real. I think it was the Arctic Express or something. People had this very adverse reaction to the people, and I kind of felt that in rooms full of friends, people looking at you like, it looks just like Matty. He's almost real, but like there's something missing, right? There's something scary. There's something scary about brain stuff that people are very uncomfortable with.
I mean, that's just got to be devastating, trying to imagine being in your place. How did you get connected with the writing work here in Portland? And how has that helped? Or how has that played out for you?
I had none of my stories are short because I always have to, my partner is the same way. We both have brain injury. And so we tell these long rambling stories, and they have to always start from the very beginning and go to the end, and people are kind of like, but my therapist, who is I still have from Hawaii, the brain trauma, that's what she deals with. And she told me just to start writing every day. She said, it doesn't matter what you write. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like a journal. She was like, no, doesn't matter, just write. And I quickly realized that all of the skills that I was missing verbally, because my speech was at that point so bad, they all existed in writing. Like everything I couldn't do. And when I wrote, I visualized. And it was almost like when I write, I see a movie that I write about. And that's how I write.
That's exciting.
And so I'm simply describing what I'm seeing. And it was such a relief to have something in here. Which at the same time, I was learning to visualize things again, which was interesting because I used to look up here to see things. And now I have to look over there because they don't exist over here anymore. Wow. So when I'm looking for, like when you look into your brain, oftentimes you look at the part of the brain you see things in. And so I look somewhere else now. But when I write, it's just like right here. It's just like a movie, and I see it, and I can write about it. And so I wrote reams, and I wrote stories about my injury. I wrote the spiritual stories of my injury, because for me, it became a spiritual experience of dying, of rebirth, of living. My dream world is full of animal spirits and forests, and that's like where I was living in my dreams. I could visualize perfectly too, because I would sleep so much. And so I wrote about it, and I painted like colors for me are just I was like on an acid trip when I woke up. And so, so then I went to Portland, and I had this other thing that was going on where I thought like everybody I saw, I thought I recognized. And I saw a thing, and I saw a post from Lydia on my Facebook page, and I thought, and at that point, for some reason, nobody told me you didn't know everybody on your Facebook page. So for one, I thought I knew her and had probably just forgotten. And then, so her and Dami were doing a thing for, the misfits.
Right. Manifesto.
And I went to it at which was kind of unbelievable because I didn't go to rooms full of people. It was like the noise was like too much, but I thought I should go to this. And I was like, oh my God, these are my people. And I went down to their office studio thing, and which is to me unbelievable that I was feeling so bad about myself at this point, and so demoralized. I actually went down there 3 times and never went in, and then finally went in, and I think Domi was there, and we just sat down, and it was like talking, and the people that came in there, it was like all of a sudden I was exposed to people who were like me in one fashion or another, who were used to not really being part of society. So at that point, I would still get like asked to leave restaurants when I wouldn't be able to order, or, just, I still can't drive. So I walked everywhere, and you're kind of like this silent thing. It's like, I have certain feel for the street people, because you just kind of floating around out there.
Yeah.
But it was like a belong. And I had this place to go, and
that's fabulous.
They really, at that point, nobody had read my writing, and Dami was like reading my writing and going, "Oh, this is really good stuff." And it was like having somebody else like, "Oh, okay." And I would show her like the paintings I was doing, and it saved my life. And then I took a writing class from Sonia Lay, whose husband, who wrote a book about her husband, who had, I cannot think of the word, he had an operation and lost too much blood, which was, I also lost a lot of blood. And that was part of my injury, was just dehydration. With a brain injury, it's not really what you want, and blood loss.
Your story is so inspirational, and the fact that you connected with the misfit, it just was coincidence that you happened to see that and then followed through on it. And yeah, Dami and Lydia, that whole, they're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Oh, they are like my best friends now. And I realized I could make new friends that didn't have the history.
Right.
That were, because for them, I was just Matty. That was it. There was no like, oh, he used to be the coolest guy. Look at him now.
With the couple of minutes that we've got left, because of course I have the free Zoom, is if you had advice to give a partner, or you choose, if you had advice to give, what advice would you give to people in interacting with somebody who's had a brain injury? Or just advice in general? Sorry, that was a lot of questions.
Oh, I would just have patience and sit, give them time, because communicating is so hard, and it's like give them the time to express what they need, and it's like they're different. It's like they are butterflies. They just transform, right? So they're having the chance of a lifetime to actually become something different.
Wow.
And so see it with eyes like you're seeing a miracle, maybe. What I would tell people.
That was a pretty fabulous jazz improv interview you just did. Oh, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing and being open to share some of what you've gone through. I know that there are people who are on the whole spectrum of what kind of injury they had. And listening to people tell their stories helps people not feel that they're alone. Even if their story is different, it's just listening to somebody. So you will help people by sharing this story.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing it, because it's hard. I think there's a lot more help out there now.
Yeah, I would agree. Take care. It was so nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for joining me this month. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends, leave a comment, and subscribe. Until next month, take a moment and hug someone you love.